what if I told you that the expiration date stamped on your milk carton actually holds the secret to one of the biggest supply chain mysteries in modern agriculture?
It really does. It's a completely hidden mechanism.
Right. So picture this. You are walking down what is arguably the coldest, most intimidating aisle in the entire grocery store, the dairy section.
Oh, absolutely. The fluorescent lights humming, you're
Yeah.
shivering a little bit.
Exactly. You're just trying to grab a gallon of milk for your morning coffee, maybe some yogurt or a wedge of cheese.
hmm
And then you experience that universal price pinch.
Yeah, the sticker shock is real.
You look at the conventional milk and then you look at the organic milk. And I mean, the price difference isn't just a few pennies anymore.
No, it is a profound jump. Depending on where you live,
Yeah.
you are routinely looking at organic milk, butter, and cheese that cost literally double the price of the conventional alternatives.
Double. Which is wild.
It forces a real pause at the checkout counter, for sure.
It does, because, well, that kind of markup elevates organic dairy from a casual treat-yourself purchase to a major household budget decision.
Exactly. It's an investment.
So our mission for this deep dive is to look at the stack of agricultural research, the nutritional studies, and the supply chain data you've brought us, and answer a critical question for you.
Which is, what are we actually paying for?
Right. Is paying double for organic dairy actually a justified investment in your cellular health? Or are we all just, I don't know, funding a very expensive pastoral marketing fantasy?
That's the perfect way to frame it, because to evaluate the true worth of that organic label, we have to look far beyond the white liquid in the glass.
Which is all we usually see.
Right. The sources make it clear that we need to examine the biological life of the animal, the underlying chemistry of how milk is synthesized, and the systemic realities of modern high-density agriculture.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we want to understand why organic costs twice as much, the research suggests we actually need to start by looking at what you are paying to avoid, right?
Yes, the avoidance factor is massive.
We need to look at the hidden chemical blueprint of the conventional dairy model. So where do we start?
Well, the foundational difference between organic and conventional dairy really originates in regulatory frameworks. Let's look at synthetic hormones first.
Okay, hormones, yeah.
In the United States, the conventional dairy model permits the use of synthetic growth hormones, most notably RBGH, or recombinant bovine growth hormone.
And just to establish a baseline for everyone, the endocrine system in any mammal, whether that's humans or cows, is basically the body's hormone control center, right?
Precisely. It dictates growth, metabolism, reproduction, all of that.
So when we introduce a synthetic hormone like RBGH, what is the actual mechanism at play? Like, what does it do to the cow?
The mechanism is artificial stimulation. RBGH basically forces the cow's liver to produce higher levels of another hormone called IGF-1.
Which does what exactly?
It essentially drives the animal's biology into overdrive to maximize milk yield. It's a tool for scaling production, purely and simply. But what's fascinating here is how the global agricultural community views this practice. The research notes a major regional nuance here.
Yeah, I was reading through that specific legislation in the stack. Canada, along with the European Union, banned the use of RBGH in dairy cattle decades ago.
They did. And it's really important to look at why they banned it.
Right, because the bans weren't even necessarily about human safety first, were they? I mean, they were driven by animal health concerns.
Exactly. The forced overproduction from those hormones leads to significantly higher rates of mastitis.
Which is a painful udder infection, right?
It is. Mastitis, along with just general metabolic burnout in the herds, that is what the veterinary data clearly indicates.
That sounds incredibly stressful for the animal.
It's a highly stressed system. But while hormone regulations differ across borders,
Yeah.
allowed in the U.S., banned in Canada, the conventional approach to managing those resulting infections introduces another massive variable.
Antibiotics.
Yes, antibiotics.
Hmm.
And the practices here in both the U.S. and Canada stand in stark contrast to organic standards.
Walk us through how antibiotics are actually deployed in a conventional setting, because the sources describe a model that goes, well, way beyond just treating a sick animal.
Oh, absolutely. In many conventional high-density dairy operations, animals are kept in very close quarters to maximize space and efficiency.
Makes sense from a business standpoint.
Right, but when you have that kind of population density, the statistical risk of respiratory and bacterial infections naturally skyrockets.
Because they're all packed in together.
Precisely. According to the literature, the industry structural solution is often prophylactic.
Meaning preventative.
Preventative, yes. They administer preventative antibiotics to the herd to suppress infections before they can spread and disrupt production.
Okay, wait. I want to push back on the scale of this for a second.
Sure.
Because we're constantly warned by the medical community that taking antibiotics unnecessarily is a terrible idea, right?
Yeah.
Like it wipes out our microbiome.
Right. The typical advice is to only take them when absolutely necessary.
Exactly. So wait, are conventional farms basically treating cows the way a paranoid human might take antibiotics every day just in case they catch a cold on a crowded subway?
That is actually a shockingly accurate analogy. The data shows it is a standard preventative measure in high-density models.
That is wild to me. We are deploying this strategy on an industrial scale within our food supply.
We are, and this raises a crucial question regarding systemic consequences. I mean, the immediate concern for consumers is trace antibiotic residues surviving in the milk itself.
Which nobody wants in their morning coffee.
No, exactly. But the much larger macro-level issue highlighted in the research is antibiotic resistance.
How does that actually happen on a biological level, just from the cows?
Well, when you constantly expose a massive bacterial population to sublethal preventative doses of antibiotics, it basically acts as an evolutionary training ground.
A training ground for the bacteria.
Yes, the weakest bacteria die off, but the strong ones survive, they mutate, and they literally swap genetic code with one another to build resistance.
Oh, wow. So they're learning how to beat the drugs.
Exactly. These superbugs can eventually migrate from agricultural environments into the broader human ecosystem.
Which fundamentally changes how we should view that organic label, I think.
It completely reframes it.
Right, because if I'm buying certified organic, the regulations state that these cows are legally prohibited from receiving synthetic growth hormones, and they are strictly forbidden from receiving preventative antibiotics, correct?
That is the strict regulatory guarantee, yes.
But what if an organic cow actually gets sick?
Good clarification. If an organic cow contracts a severe infection and requires antibiotics for basic animal welfare, she is treated. They don't just let her suffer.
Okay.
But the law dictates she is then permanently removed from the certified organic milking herd. She can never produce organic dairy again.
Wow. So the premium price tag at the grocery store is essentially funding an entirely different agricultural ecosystem.
It really is.
You are paying to ensure you aren't consuming potential endocrine disruptors, which are essentially biochemical hackers that send false signals to human cells, and you aren't funding the creation of antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
That absence of chemical intervention is absolutely a primary driver for consumers. But, the research points to a massive paradigm shift here.
Okay, what kind of shift?
Organic dairy isn't just defined by what it lacks. The absence of chemicals naturally forces us to look at what is present in the milk.
Right, the actual composition of the product.
Exactly. And the molecular structure of what remains is entirely dictated by the cow's digestive biology.
This brings us to the nutritional data in our sources, which completely reframes the whole idea that you are what you eat.
Yes, that old saying.
Right, because in agriculture, the sources say it's actually more accurate to say you are what you eat eats.
It is the biological law of the dairy aisle. I mean, think about the animal. A cow is a ruminant.
Meaning they have multiple stomachs.
They have a complex, multi-chambered stomach, specifically the rumen that evolved over millions of years to ferment and break down fibrous green cellulose, basically grass.
But the conventional model, which is optimizing for high yield and rapid growth, doesn't rely heavily on pasture grass, does it?
No, not at all. The sources indicate a heavy reliance on starchy grains like corn and soy.
Because it fattens them up faster.
That is the standard feed model for maximizing output, yes. But feeding heavy, highly concentrated starch to an animal biologically designed for fibrous grass fundamentally alters its internal chemistry.
How so?
The starch causes the pH level in the cow's rumen to drop, which creates a highly acidic environment in their gut.
Okay, so they have an acidic stomach from the grain.
Right. And this acidity changes the bacterial flora in the gut, which in turn completely alters the types of fatty acids the cow synthesizes and secretes into its milk.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. To carry that certified organic label in the US and Canada, farms have to comply with something called the Access to Pasture Rule, right? Commonly known as the 120-day rule.
That's right. By federal law, organic dairy cows must spend a mandatory minimum of 120 days per year actively grazing on open pasture.
So they have to be outside, eating real grass.
Yes. They cannot be confined and fed a purely grain-based diet. They must consume the fresh green forage their stomachs evolved to process.
I have to ask the obvious logistical question here, though. What happens the other 245 days of the year?
Ah, yes.
Because, I mean, in places like Wisconsin or Alberta where the ground is covered in 3 feet of snow, they can't exactly graze on open pasture.
It's a great question. During the non-grazing season, the rules still apply to the type of feed.
So what do they eat in winter?
They must be fed 100% certified organic forage, like dried organic alfalfa or grass silage. And they are strictly prohibited from consuming feed treated with synthetic pesticides or herbicides.
That makes sense.
But it's those 120 days of fresh pasture that trigger the most profound nutritional changes in the milk itself.
And the studies measuring those changes are just staggering. Peer-reviewed analysis in our research stack shows that organic, pasture-raised milk contains up to 60% higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids compared to conventional milk.
60%. That is a massive difference.
It's huge.
And the mechanism behind this is entirely driven by that rumen pH we discussed earlier.
The acidic stomach thing.
Exactly. A grain-heavy diet produces a high ratio of omega-6 fatty acids, which are generally pro-inflammatory. A grass-heavy diet, on the other hand, produces omega-3 fatty acids, which are strongly anti-inflammatory.
But wait, let me challenge this slightly.
Sure, go ahead.
We know we are supposed to get omega-3s from wild-caught salmon or, walnuts or chia seeds. Dairy is often categorized as inherently inflammatory by a lot of nutritionists.
That is a very common perspective.
Right. So does a 60% bump in omega-3s in a glass of milk actually move the needle on a typical Western diet?
It's a vital distinction to make. While dairy won't replace salmon as your primary omega-3 source, we have to look at the ratio.
The ratio of omega-3 to omega-6.
Exactly. The modern Western diet is severely overloaded with omega-6s from seed oils and processed grains and deficient in omega-3s.
We are way out of balance.
Yes. So consuming conventional high-fat dairy just adds to that inflammatory omega-6 burden. Upgrading to organic shifts that specific dietary intake from a net negative to a net positive, pushing your overall ratio closer to biological equilibrium.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. And the grass diet doesn't just boost omega-3s. The sources highlight another mineral compound too, conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA.
Yes, CLA. It's a naturally occurring trans fat, and I should note, the healthy kind, entirely different from synthetic trans fats you find in junk food.
Right, completely different chemical behavior.
Exactly. And it is synthesized almost exclusively when ruminants digest fresh growing pasture.
So the grass is key.
The grass is non-negotiable for CLA. It is heavily linked in clinical literature to improved metabolic health, cardiovascular support, and enhanced immune function.
Wow.
You simply cannot generate high concentrations of CLA from a cow fed exclusively on corn in a concrete feedlot.
So upgrading to organic means you're actually buying a functional food designed for cellular repair.
Essentially, yes.
But this brings us to one of the most counterintuitive paradoxes in this entire deep dive.
The shelf life.
Yes. We've just spent 10 minutes talking about how organic milk is fundamentally more natural pasture grass, no synthetic hormones, no antibiotics.
The purest form of dairy, ideally.
Right. Yet, if you look at a carton of organic milk in your fridge, it lasts 3 times as long as conventional milk. The expiration dates are sometimes months out.
It does seem completely backward.
Why does the most natural product rely on the most unnatural shelf life?
It is a brilliant paradox, and it all comes down to supply chain logistics colliding with physics.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, organic milk represents a significantly smaller market share than conventional dairy.
Meaning there are fewer organic farms and they are spread out much further apart from each other.
Exactly. The geographic distance between a certified organic farm, the processing plant, and the eventual grocery store shelf is typically much, much longer.
So it spends more time in a truck?
Right. The milk moves slower through the supply chain. If they use standard pasteurization, the milk would simply spoil in transit before you ever bought it.
And standard pasteurization being the process where you heat milk to about 161 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds to kill the dangerous pathogens.
Yes, it makes the milk safe, but it leaves behind harmless bacteria that eventually cause the milk to sour within a couple of weeks in your fridge.
Okay, so how do they fix the transit issue?
To bridge the geographic gap for organic milk, the industry utilizes a technology called UHT, or ultra-high temperature pasteurization.
And this is where the physics come in.
UHT blasts the milk at roughly 280 degrees Fahrenheit for a mere 2 seconds.
280 degrees.
Yes. That extreme rapid heat essentially sterilizes the fluid. It eradicates practically all microbial life, good and bad.
I have to throw a flag here. I mean, if we are blasting this milk with 280-degree heat to sterilize it, aren't we basically killing the product?
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't that destroy all those incredible omega-3s and CLAs we just paid double for? Are we sacrificing vital nutrition just so the milk can survive a longer truck ride?
It is definitely the most common concern among health-conscious consumers. But the chemistry of the milk provides the answer.
Okay, tell me the chemistry saves the day.
It does. Heat affects different molecules in different ways.
Yeah.
The 280-degree blast does denature some of the water-soluble proteins.
Denature meaning it changes their shape.
Right, which is actually why UHT milk can sometimes have a faintly sweet or almost cooked flavor profile due to a mild Maillard reaction.
Oh, I've always wondered why it tasted a little different. So the proteins get slightly altered. What about the fats?
Lipids, the fats, are incredibly stable under this type of brief, intense heat. The omega-3 fatty acids and the CLAs remain structurally intact.
Okay, that is a huge relief.
You lose a negligible amount of water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C, but, I mean, milk is not a primary dietary source for those anyway. The core macronutrients and those highly sought-after anti-inflammatory fats survive the process completely fine.
So UHT is basically a technological bridge. It solves a geographical supply chain problem while preserving the structural integrity of the fat.
Exactly. And if we look at the practical application for you, the consumer, this massive shelf life turns a logistical hurdle into an incredible economic advantage.
Because it doesn't go bad as fast.
Right. Organic milk can sit unopened in your refrigerator for literally months without spoiling.
Which completely eliminates the dreaded sour milk down the drain scenario.
The worst feeling.
I mean, wasting half a gallon of cheap conventional milk because it went chunky is functionally the same economic loss as buying a slightly more expensive gallon and utilizing every last drop.
The math evens out.
But speaking of economics, we really need to ground this conversation in reality.
We do. We can map out the ideal nutritional profiles and the biochemistry all day, but inflation is real.
It is very real. Grocery budgets are stretched to their absolute limits right now.
Exactly. Replacing every single conventional dairy item in a household with certified organic PAS, especially for a family going through multiple gallons of milk plus cheese and yogurt every week, that could easily add thousands of dollars to an annual grocery bill.
It's completely unfeasible for most people.
Yeah.
But this is exactly why we do these deep dives. Because buried in the agricultural chemistry is a strategic map for how to navigate the dairy aisle without going broke.
Yes.
It's an actionable hack from the sources called the fat binding rule.
I would argue this is the most valuable piece of intelligence in the entire stack of research today. It relies on the fundamental property of lipophilic compounds.
Lipophilic, meaning literally fat-loving.
Correct. Toxins, synthetic hormones, pesticide residues from conventional grain feed. These compounds are predominantly lipophilic.
So they love fat.
They do. When a cow metabolizes them, they do not dissolve evenly throughout the animal's bloodstream or water weight. They actively seek out and bind to fat cells. They concentrate in the lipids.
So let's use an analogy here to make this clear. If we imagine the components of milk, the fat molecules are essentially acting like a biological sponge, right? Soaking up and trapping the chemical environment of the cow.
That is exactly what they do.
Whereas the water and the protein content of the milk are more like glass. The chemicals just slide right off. They don't have anything to bind to.
That is an excellent visualization. The higher the fat content in the dairy product, the higher the potential concentration of trapped fat-soluble residues.
So what does this all mean for your grocery list? It gives you a highly precise map of where to spend your money and where to save it.
Exactly.
If toxins are trapped in the fat sponge, you absolutely want to prioritize buying organic for your high-fat dairy items.
Yes, you allocate your premium budget toward grass-fed butter, whole milk, heavy cream, and full-fat yogurts.
Because those have the biggest sponges.
Right. These are the items where the organic certification provides maximum protective benefit. You are ensuring that those concentrated fat molecules are pristine, chemical-free, and rich in anti-inflammatory omega-3s.
And then we just flip the script for the budget.
We do.
If things are tight, you intentionally buy conventional for your zero-fat or low-fat items. Skim milk, non-fat yogurt, low-fat string cheeses.
Exactly. Because the sponge has been mechanically separated and removed from these products, the risk of chemical exposure plummets.
You are essentially just buying the water, the lactose, and the protein.
It allows you to protect your lipid intake without paying a premium for the water content. It's a very elegant solution.
It really is.
But If we connect this to the bigger picture of the agricultural ecosystem, we must acknowledge that certified organic isn't the only marker of quality out there. There are nuances outside of that specific government label.
Right, because what if even the organic butter is just completely out of reach this month? What are the viable alternatives that still offer some biological benefit?
You can look for conventional products explicitly labeled grass-fed or pasture-raised.
Okay, so look for those keywords.
Now, to be clear, without the organic certification, this does not legally guarantee the total absence of antibiotics or hormones. That depends heavily on local regulations. But it does indicate the animal was feeding on pasture.
And as we've established, the grass diet is what shifts that fatty acid profile toward omega-3s and CLA.
Exactly. The sources also point heavily toward local, independent farming as the ultimate hack.
Oh, I love a local farmer's market.
Often it is the superior choice. If you investigate small-scale, local dairy operations in your region, you will find that many of them employ pristine, pasture-based organic practices.
They don't have the label.
Right. They do not carry the official organic label simply because they cannot afford the immense bureaucratic overhead and the tens of thousands of dollars required for the certification audits.
Which means you can often get organic quality, pasture-raised milk at a much lower price point just by going to a farmer's market and having a 5-minute conversation. You just ask them, hey, are your cows on pasture? Do you use prophylactic antibiotics? You bypass the supply chain entirely.
It requires proactive engagement with your food system, but it yields a superior product, supports local agricultural economics, and entirely circumvents the massive markups of the grocery store aisle.
So let's pull all of these threads together as we wrap up. We've navigated the chemistry of the rumen, the mechanics of antibiotic resistance, the whole paradox of ultra-high temperature pasteurization, and the economics of lipophilic fat binding.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. And the mission was to determine if organic dairy is a justified investment.
And the research indicates that it is not merely a marketing fantasy. It is a fundamentally different biochemical product, synthesized by an animal functioning in a biologically appropriate environment, resulting in a distinct nutritional profile.
And we have to circle back to one vital concept before we go.
Right.
Bioavailability. Dairy is a highly bioavailable food.
Meaning the human digestive system is incredibly efficient at breaking it down. You don't have to ferment it or synthesize it. Your body absorbs the lipid compounds in milk, butter, and cheese extremely rapidly.
So if you were going to change just one habit in your kitchen this week to optimize your cellular repair, lower systemic inflammation, and avoid hidden chemical hackers' focus on your high-fat dairy,
That's the takeaway.
swap out the butter, upgrade the whole milk, protect your fat intake, and let the skim milk take the budget cuts.
This raises one final crucial question for you to consider as you apply this research.
What's that?
Think deeply about that mechanism of bioavailability we just discussed. Because high-fat dairy is absorbed so rapidly and efficiently into our own tissues, whatever the cow metabolized, whether it was anti-inflammatory pasture grass or traces of synthetic hormones and preventative antibiotics, is integrated into our cellular makeup almost instantly.
Instantly.
Given the sheer scale of conventional dairy consumption in the modern world, you have to wonder, how much passive, cumulative chemical exposure have we just accepted as a normal, unavoidable part of our daily breakfast for the last 50 years, simply because we never looked past the white liquid in the glass?
Something to seriously ponder the next time you find yourself shivering in that fluorescent lit aisle, reaching for the milk?